1973, there was a very little known horror film that premiered on ABC called Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. It was positively received at the time, but then slowly forgotten. However, a certain filmmaker was inspired by and scared by the film when he was a kid, Guillermo del Toro. He wanted to produce a remake of the film and decided to co-write the film with Matthew Robbins and chose comic book artist Troy Nixey to direct. It was eventually released in 2011. So, not many people know of this film nowadays, much like the original film, as it was pretty much forgotten in time. I barely knew anything about the original film before this review, except that it existed and that this film was a remake. I remember trailers for it back in 2010/2011, so it is in my memory banks for some reason. This is probably one of the weirdest films to exist, mainly because the original isn't that well known or anything. It doesn't even really have a cult fan base or anything like that. It just kinda exists and somewhat inspired Del Toro. Then this movie gets made and no one remembers it either. It's very weird. But despite this, I thought it was a good movie with great ideas, which were not executed as well as it could have been. I think this film could have been a lot better if Guillermo del Toro directed, because despite the writing being for the most part rather good, the direction just felt bland and not very creative. Same goes for the recent film Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which Guillermo del Toro also co-produced and co-wrote, and would have been a lot better if he directed, but that's neither here nor there. I think the first half of Don't Be Afraid of the Dark, well, about the first half or so, is where the movie shines, mainly because of the relationship between Kim and Sally. I thought the drama involving them was actually really well written, and Madison and Holmes did a really good job working off one another. In general, the acting from everyone was really good, and one of the better parts of the movie. The drama was, in fact, better than the horror. With that, I think the movie could have been a lot better if we're not sure if there were actual monsters. That maybe it's in Sally's head. And the film could have been more so about a child's trauma dealing with her parents being separated. Then also showcase the growing relationship between Kim and Sally being healthy and good for her as a sign of moving on, and we might assume the monsters whispering to her is her own self doubt. Then in the final act it's revealed that they're actually monsters and fueling her darker qualities. But as it is, it's just a good horror flick. At points, it almost felt like a more sanitized and Americanized version of Pan's Labyrinth. I also thought the creature designs were really stupid looking. I get what they were going for, but the CGI was really bad and they kinda just look like zombified rats. However, despite my gripes with the film, I still enjoyed the genuinely great aspects of the movie, despite those ideas not being as good as they could have been. It still has fantastic acting from everyone involved, the drama between those characters being really well written for the most part, and the horror not being that bad either in hindsight. It still had some good tense moments, and it did remind me of my fear when I was little of being afraid of the dark, but in a good way, as well as having that Del Toro charm that I really enjoyed. The good, I think, far outweighs the bad, as there isn't really anything that terrible in the film, outside of the CGI. Don't Be Afraid of the Dark has long been forgotten, but just like the wish of the monsters in the film, maybe it's about time we remember it again.